Benoit, I put you on the hook to write a big old write-up on Desync, and I know it's being worked on. I've seen the draft and whatnot. It's being worked on between every other initiative. Time spent writing is time spent not actually fixing things and making processes better.
Also, we got a couple guest stars in it that I'm hoping will make a difference too.
So that's still underway. That's still underway, and it's more like it's not a design brief. That's not the right thing, but kind of like what you saw with the gameplay guide. We're gonna break it down, and I promise you it'll be the most educated thing that you'll ever see from a game studio on what it is and what it isn't and what causes it and what doesn't cause it and stuff like that.
And the particularities of our game architecture.
Yeah.
Also.
When 4.8 went out, I started with 4.7. 4.7 was great overall, but there's a reason I had to call you and ask you. There's been this mounting desync for the last several patches. It starts out small, it gets bigger. It affects some people more disproportionately than others. There are people that I have talked to, whether at a Bar Citizen or just reading the chat here today or in any other.
That's a true fact. I always say it. We're all playing a different version of the game. Something that's happening to me is not happening to them. Something that's happening to all of us is not happening to this very specific person. It's like, yeah, I've had perfect gameplay. It's like, it's not perfect. Everything seems to be uniquely based to every single player.
Show where they're having a virtually unplayable experience, and then there are other people who are like, "That's not my experience.
Exactly.
I'm having, I'm having a wonderful time and whatnot." Without just reading the entire doc that we're doing, I can't get past this show without talking about it at least somewhat.
Yeah.
What do we know is causing it at this point? What are we doing to resolve it?
Rectify it.
Just a simple question.
Well, so what we know about right now is that there are some meshes. When I say meshes, I mean a dedicated game server inside a shard that are running way below FPS spec that we want, right? And so we don't have a handle just yet about what is actually causing it. We do have performance captures, and we're tracking at least 6 to 8 very specific optimizations that need to happen. One of them is within the area component, which is used all over the engine. Area and zone component, they kind of go in hand, but because we're pushing more content, right? The hierarchy trees of the game world is much bigger. So there's more areas, more zones, more subdivision, more. There are some areas of that where if you add a lot of entities in those that enter or exit these areas,
it starts to slow down.
The engine provides the listeners to track entities entering areas or leaving areas or zones changing, right? And obviously there's concurrency constructs around this to prevent one thread from accessing another thread, right? And so just keeping it simple without diving too much into the low level, which we will probably in some of our desync areas. But there's lock contention in the area component at the moment. In some places, there's lock contention in some areas of the game. Well, I literally mean area, like, if there's many entities in this spot, because of the way it's configured, we're seeing basically FPS drops in those areas. And so we're tracking about, like I said, 6 to 8 major optimizations that we're trying to get in our hotfix channel, right, to try to get this FPS back up to the spec that we want, which is above 20, across.
Is that server spec or game?
Server FPS, correct.
Server, bro. I was like, 20 FPS? What do you mean by that? I ain't playing Star Citizen on 20 FPS.
You take that clip and say, "Oh no, Star Citizen's only looking for 20 FPS."
That's what my brain said.
No. And it's important to note that when a server is running low FPS, it doesn't mean that it will create desync, but especially when you're interacting with entities that are simulated on that DGS, AI characters, NPCs, then you're going to perceive desync because the source is slow at creating its output. And the traffic goes from your game client to the replication node. Replication node to game server. Now, if game server is running slow, at the beginning of the frame, he's taking the state from the game, from the network to the game and applying it. At the end of it, he's applying the changes back to the network.
And that's what we see.
If that loop is slow, then your client's going to predict something, and then that prediction will get corrected the next frame. and that will create a rubber band, right? And so that's the gist of why there's desync.
Right. Okay, so my game knows what's supposed to happen if I do something. So when I do something, my game knows what's supposed to happen and can predict that movement. So when it goes into the network and it comes back out, gets spat back out, I don't see the transition from this NPC walked from here to there. I just see this NPC, it was here and now it's here. I'm supposed to see the in between, but because it's so slow, my game just skips all those frames and gives me the rubber band. It's like poof. That makes sense. Okay.
Why does the client have to predict?
Because if he doesn't predict, then you're going to be at the tick of the server, and you'll see like
The
Even if it was running
tick 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 tick.
you'd see
Right. Okay.
in an FPS, like
Gotcha.
because your need for it to be, so responsive is too
Yeah.
high.
And then we see. Yeah.
Is
Okay.
this-
I get it.
So, all right. The meshes inside the shard are certain ones are slowing down,
correct. It's not widespread in all areas.
which is why some people are in
I'm
there
not
having a great.
I'm not going to tell you which areas. That's what you're asking.
Yeah, which to avoid.
We think we all know the areas. I think we all know the areas.
I got to
Let's
ask
not
the
lie.
obvious question. Then, at least it's obvious. It seems obvious to me.
Mm-hmm.
Is this related to the ship cleanup or lack thereof?
Yes,
one-
no, 100%. I'm seeing too many freaking Idrises, Perseuses, Polarises, A90 jumps, all of these ships everywhere, and they're just there and they don't disappear. You could be on the server for like 6 hours. Every time you go back to Levski or Baijin, or they're all there. Where's the ship cleanup? Those are definitely adding
One
to
of
the
those
issue.
things that we're looking at is how aggressive or not the ship cleanup is actually happening.
It needs to be more aggressive.
That's one of the things we're looking at. Yes.
More aggressive.
I mean, because you can watch a Twitch stream or look at an Initiative Council report, and you'll see. I want to say dozens and dozens, but I feel like it's even more.
Yeah.
Bricked ships everywhere
Yeah,
because
that
with the
that too. Okay, that too, because back in the day, like a couple of months ago, if you see a ship that's out there and it's open, right? A lot of these ships I'm seeing out there, they're bricked, but they're open, right? If you saw a ship like that and you're like around the station, or your ship just got destroyed or blew up or something, what I would do is I normally, like, let's say I have my Avenger Titan, I'm going out there and I see like, I don't know, a C2, all doors open. Low key, I'm quite literally going to park my Avenger Titan, stow it in my hangar, drop it down, go to the pad, EVA, and go get into the C2. If it's been out there for 2 hours and no one is taking it away and it's not getting cleaned up by the server, I would take it. But think about it, you can't do that anymore, because you go into the C2 or whatever, and suddenly it's bricked. So you can't use it, and then that ship stays out there. So that is going to actually add way more ships that are unusable, and they're just there. They're just taking up space for no reason,
with the insurance changes and whatnot, breaking these ships
Yeah.
and whatnot. Is this viably part of what it is? Is this?
In part, yeah, that's for
It has
sure
to
doesn't
be,
help,
yeah.
because the more entities are replicated, the more the server needs to do every frame,
gonna
and so that
struggle,
contributes
exactly.
to this. So yes,
You can usually find it when you look at a server that is performing great. It usually has a larger vehicle population, certainly.
The server
Vehicles
that is
are-
performing great has a larger.
No, a firm not performing so
Oh.
great tends to have a slightly larger vehicle population, or a
Right, so
very
the
large active
ships.
population. That can also happen. In general,
The
just
ships are the issue.
a lot of everything. We're quite a heavy game, entity-wise.
Oh, quite
We
a
want
heavy
to avoid
game.
getting to the sort of size that we were in Stanton before we went into meshing, right? Because that was consistently difficult to manage.
Stezig is like, fix it. Super helpful, dude.
Yeah, let's just fix it. It's
Oh, man,
super
so easy. We're done.
Let's just
It's
fix
Ah,
it.
you know what, Stezig? I honestly, none of us had thought about that. That's all right. We don't even need to do the rest of the show, do we?
yeah, I know that.
No, I get the sentiment, but I feel like you can't just say fix the game. It's work on this thing, this one system, because at least they can fix systems and then that starts to compile. But you can't just say fix the game. It doesn't work like that. You can't just fix the whole game with one thing.
There's been some changes related to how we perform entity cleanup. So unattended vehicle cleanup used to be a separate system, right, that ran on its own. That's been merged into what we call the density manager, which is basically an engine functionality that will look at overpopulation in clusters of areas that obviously designers have control over, For example, we want to make sure, like the exit routes for hangars are cleaned up, and so these
They're
are,
never
have
clean.
active cleanup
I crash
zones
into something
configured,
every time I leave my hangar.
That's designer controlled. Now the engine will then, after that, apply the logic on the volume, determine, there's too many of X in this area, and we'll start popping stuff out, right? He's going to do the cleanup. Now for ships, the unattended vehicle cleanup system used to be separate. Now it's been brought into the density manager, I think end of last year, something like this. So it's been a while. And this one tracks whether there's passengers on passengers on a vehicle, and will, based on a certain timer configuration, and the values are different depending on the areas, will either stow back the ship into the originating inventory or destroy it, depending on if it's a player-owned.
Okay. I've noticed that some of my bricked ships, if I die like a bunker or something and I have to reclaim my ship, sometimes I come back and then I have a bricked version of the ship in my hangar and I'm like, I didn't put this there. So they're saying they're stowing it away. Okay, but does that also mean that, let's say you as a player, you see an empty ship and you want to go try and see if you can use it, then ends up being bricked. Does the fact that you stepped onto that ship reset the timer? Meaning that if you see a ship out there, just say it's bricked. In your head, say it's bricked. Don't even go into the ship because you're resetting the timer.
It does look like maybe there's a misconfiguration in key areas that are leaving ships there. So we don't think the system
there definitely is.
Incorrectly functioning. We think it might be inaccurately configured.
Yeah.
Okay.
In some areas, and so that would allow a very popular area to just accumulate
Have
ships
a
like
bunch
crazy,
of ships,
right?
100%.
And so that's what we're looking at
Stations,
right now.
home stations.
Are you able to clean up? Are you able to differentiate between? You obviously mentioned a ship that has a person on it. That's great. A ship that doesn't have a person on it, but is still a viable ship, versus a destroyed
ship.
husk versus a bricked ship.
If they can't discern between that with the systems, there's a big issue. There's a big gaping issue. But that also asks the question, now that we have this bricked system in, right, there should be some sort of thing or some sort of machine that can say, these are the ships that are bricked, and have a list of all these ships. Now that we have that, is there a way to assign a contract for people with vultures and who do salvage to go take apart those ships, giving them access to go to certain locations and be able to use things like a vulture, misfortune, or salvation to break down ships? That's an actual thing, because there should be a way to tag these things.
Yep,
Yes.
from the inventory, you're able to distinguish between
Yes.
and set timers for.
I'm not sure if the density manager will have a modifier specifically for bricked or not, but
Will
it can see it.
It does or it will.
It will.
It will.
Okay.
It has to.
Eventually.
Yeah, if it
If it doesn't, it will.
Yeah.
Eventually.
Because
And it's less about timers, it's more about density. It's sort of trying to say
Okay.
you have overpopulated this area. So it's less about like that ship has been there for a long period of time. It's more like there's a lot of ships here.
yeah.
There
Let's
shouldn't
remove
be.
one. Let's figure out which one is best to remove. For unattended vehicle does have a timer as well. So you kind of have these like, it's sort of like what we talked about.
Yeah, that makes sense. See, it's a really sticky one because we like persistence. Us playing Star Citizen, we like persistence, but also it's like in the future when you want to go somewhere, you want to go salvaging, you want to find some dead ships that you can salvage and break down. But if everything is cleaned up because of a timer, you could go out there and you'll find nothing if the timer just ran out and everything is gone. So we like persistence. We want to be able to go and say, oh, look, there was obviously a battle here. There's half a ship here, half a Polaris, half a C2, half of this, half of that. Let me break them down. This is an aftermath of a battle. You want to be able to do that. But if it's like, oh, nope, 30 minutes, ship is gone, we don't have that persistence. So I get the way where it's like, it's not based on there's too many ships. It's been overpopulated now. We need to remove one or two to keep the population at the limit.
Validation. You start with a timer, then you start adding intensity, then you start sort of building up these views of the world to kind of understand which areas are problematic. Like, oh yeah, the entrance to a hangar, we have to be super strict.
Yeah.
There's a place, as we're talking about this, something that pops in my mind that I think is also, in our process. Now, not even development process, but let's call it live operations of the game. We're very lean in terms of our live operations at CIG because we're in development, right? And
Yeah, so live ops is
even though we do run
it's
a
not a
live
big
service,
issue. It's not
the
live ops team is not going to be as big as a regular company like freaking Grand Theft Auto or World of Warcraft or ESO. Those are staple games that are finished. So basically, everyone is just focusing on the live operations and keeping all of that smoothing out. Star Citizen is way too early to be doing all of that at a heavy pace.
we try to run a really lean ship, right, on that side. And so we don't have an army of site reliability engineers that are looking at like every aspect
Everything,
of
yeah.
like,
Optimization.
oh, Shard 25 is an overpopulation of ships at Jackson Swap in, between this time frame, time frame. Like we don't go in that depth, right? And so we track overpopulations across all shards, right? But we can't go granular into this. But that is an area where we could improve this and detect those things to better tune these values. Typically right now we will tune the density manager values every patch or every hotfix, but that is a slow cadence compared to how you would react if you see,
Had a live
oh my
ops
God,
team. Yeah.
on every shard this location is loaded, let's affect the density manager change right now. Right now we don't have the ability to do that live, and
That
that's a
makes
problem.
sense.
That would improve the game quite a bit.
But
There's
is it
folks in the
something we should be
It
thinking
would.
of
I don't want
so
to.
early?
I don't want to dismiss that. There's folks in the chat that are like, just make the brick ships salvageable or give
Yes,
towing missions.
exactly.
Like, those
exactly.
are all
They are salvageable as far as I know.
and the towing missions. But it's those are all game design and mission design stuff. That's not anything that the tech. And even then, a solution that requires entirely player.
Is
It relies
not
on the
always the
players
best.
entirely to
It's not the
solve
best,
is not
yeah.
going to get us where we need. I don't disagree, and I know it's the intention. They're supposed to be salvageable. If they're not, they will. They will be. It's just having towing missions to take them away and dump them somewhere is a great.
I feel like the salvage missions, because think about it, guys, think about it. I feel like the missions should be towing and salvage. So basically, if you didn't know, well, I learned this like a year ago, you can use your ship tractor beams when you're in like armistice zones. So let's say around a station, all of these, you can use your ship's tractor beam. So let's say these salvage, because we have a few towing vehicles in Star Citizen right now. We could potentially give them a purpose. You say, okay, you want to go salvage this brick ship? You need to tow it away from Bygenie Point or away from somewhere else. Go to this location. Then now you can untow it, leave it there, and then now you can salvage it with your salvage ship. So in my opinion, that would be crazy. Letting people tow these ships away from the stations and then salvage it wherever they want to salvage it. That would make sense. Make it just towing missions. Literally make it towing missions for all these brick ships. Is there a tow, like, okay, how do I get a towing vehicle? Because I need to get a towing vehicle and try and see if I can tow a brick ship. That has to be tried.
The idea and stuff like that. But that can't be the only thing. There still needs to be a
systematic
technical
way,
solution to clean this up. It's the reason I asked if it could separate everything is because I don't think all of them are salvageable. I'm trying to remember an old conversation right now where there were rules about why this one could be salvageable and this one couldn't
I know
be
there's been
salvageable.
changes related to this as well recently.
But like it's in my head, I'm just like, why don't we just disappear every brick ship right now until we get a handle on this? Like just crank the cleanup on brick ships that we know don't belong to anybody. Like they get to exist for 1.5 seconds and then they're gone.
One and a half hours.
I'm just imagining the Reddit post after that. My ship disappeared 1 second after.
A brick ship. No, but the ship only gets a brick ship.
Bricked.
A brick ship is they're back at their ASOP terminal and they've reclaimed it. So why can't
Why is it still
just
there? Yeah,
vanish? Now I'm certain whenever I go off like this and whatnot, and it sounds so simple and it sounds so obvious, and then I get back to my desk and I've got an engineer or something comes and goes, it's not that simple, Jared. There's this and that. There's that dependency and blah blah. And I'm like, yeah, I'm just the layman moron who had a very simple idea, but it's hard because it's I'm no different than half the people watching the show. It's just There are times when
Yeah, it's
something
too-
seems so
simple,
easy and so
easy,
obvious.
So, yeah.
And it's like, just do that. Because that's what my head was screaming that whole time. That's where I was going. Just destroy the British ships right away.
I always say, if it was easy, it would have been done. So by that, you have to assume there is reasons
They
that
haven't
makes
done
it not
yeah.
easy. And it's usually like the complexity in the interactions. Like Benoit talked about, you sell a gun, and then you deconstruct it, and then the material can be sold somewhere else for something else. These kind of complex interactions between lots of different systems are usually what stops us from doing something that from a tech point of view is literally a flag in the database that says that's bricked, I can treat it as garbage.
There's this thing. It's what was the example? We had the example. I have to look back in our chat. There was something in the 481. It was the one of the old features for the hanger module for the. It's
hanger module.
It's in our chat. It's in our chat. Yeah, you know, it's one of the issues, and I said I can't remember. But recently, one of the things that flummoxed 481 was an old system. It was an old system from like 6 or 7 years ago that hadn't been touched. As some new piece of content touched for the first time, and it didn't work. I can't remember. It's just one of those. If making games were easy, they'd be done. I mean, you know, pivot your. There wouldn't be a studio that closes every week in the last 2 years. So 4.8 comes out.
Yeah, there's been other issues. We talked about the catastrophic ones, but there's also other tangential issues.
You want to. We've got a section coming up where we've pulled the dashboard and what folks are working on. I'll get to that in a second if that's where you were going. I want to stay a little bit more into 4.8. So we put up a thread. We collected a bunch of questions. We pulled some of that. Some of that's affected. We've used that to inform certain of the topics here. If I ask the simple question, what changed in 4.8 that affected server performance so much?
Right. Okay.
I'm just on like raw server performance.
Sure.
Whatever. What's the thing that comes to your head? I'm gonna get both of you on this
Sure.
here, so don't think you get out of this. It's try to make
For me, it's behaviors. So, you know, there's one thing about running a game server, is that it's kind of an organic behavioral system, right? And so you can have a game server with a version of the code, a version of the data running a certain way, and then players start doing something different. And that completely changes the performance profile.
Did he just say it's our fault? No, did he just say it's our fault? The server. He said the server performance is our fault. What do we do?
And so I feel like in 4.8, most likely my hunch for these 6 to 8 like performance issues that we're looking at, it's related to some imprint changes. So the way people use ships, leaving brick ships behind, are there more claims, you know, than before?
That's not our fault. You guys are forcing us to do that. That's not our fault.
Are there other egregious issues that showed up that are creating more claims that would affect, you know, the amount of entities on the server? Is there a malfunction on, for example, the density manager cleanup that is leaving items in place? Or is there just people are going to a location that's configured to be very loose on its density, and it's somehow the location that people have decided to go to in this patch? So sometimes the performance profile of the game servers changes just based on behaviors, not on like, oh, we changed something.
They're saying
You're
it's our
blaming the
fault.
backers.
Yeah,
No.
they're blaming us.
I'm
They're
blaming the
blaming
features
us.
that cause behavioral changes. And so that, for me, that's what screams. That's what comes out of it for me. You're talking raw server performance here.
Yeah, I'm not talking just the raw server performance here. What are you thinking, Jens?
I mean, it's hard not to just parrot what you just said. I mean, it does feel like when I think of 4.8, there's nothing there I can go, yeah, that gameplay changes we made could have caused it. The only thing I can think of is we did performance improvements, but there is a large change in how we handle vehicles.
So it's the
the
vehicles.
lifetime
It's the
of
brick
vehicles.
system.
You
it's
mean,
just
you
the
mean the
brick
changes
system.
with the imprinting and the insurance system and stuff.
Insurance,
So the way that the
That's not
life
our
of a
fault.
vehicle in the universe
It's
changed.
changed. Yeah.
Its lifespan with the bricking and stuff like this, and the way that players handle them because of the changes that we instituted. I want to be clear. It's
You did.
So
You did. You guys.
you're bringing it back. You're bringing it back a big chunk of it, not everything, back to the number of ships.
I mean, that would be
Just
based
say
on what
yes.
I know of that patch went out to it. I just don't see I don't recall there being any larger changes on the gameplay side. I feel like could explain it.
Yeah, we're not talking about their. I want to be real clear. It's you, folks watching. You have a lot of experience with me, and you have a lot of experience with Benoit. You know, less experience with Jens here. He's not saying that there are no bugs. There are no bugs. It's like we're talking about raw server FPS things. A bug does not impact server FPS. You know the freight elevator eating your cargo does not affect server FPS and stuff. The question I asked was what is affecting the raw server FPS, and that answer is they're trying to find an answer specifically to that. If it sounds like we don't know the answer,
They're blaming us. That's what it is.
why honestly
They don't know.
we're still working on it. It's
But they could blame us though. They could blame. They said it's us, bro. They said
somebody
it's
in
you
the
guys.
chat. Somebody in the chat said it sounds like Jared's frustrated. Of course I'm frustrated. These two guys at the table are frustrated. Quite a lot of people are frustrated. I say it over and over again. We're having the same conversations you guys are having, just 3 weeks earlier. It's like this. It's this concept that game development is game construction. You're just supposed to have all the answers, and you're supposed to know everything, and everything's supposed to be figured out before you do it and stuff. And just the reality is that's not how it works.
No,
I'm not
especially with a
talking, I'm
live
not talking about
service
CIG
game.
here. I'm talking about the entire
When
industry.
you're doing
I'm
a
talking
live
about
service
how
game,
games come
yeah,
together. I'm talking about
never.
programming. Quite honestly, it's discovery. It's discovery as you go through it. We always figure it out. We always figure it out. Like I could sit here and just gush about the quality of the people that we have here. It's like, when I go to a Bar Citizen, people always ask me like, is it hard to go out and do this? What I'm doing right now. It's less than 12 hours after a patch went out and was totally borked and whatever, and you've got to go out live and put on a face for the project and whatnot. Is it hard to do that? After 318, I had to do the thing. After the freight elevators with Race for Stand, I had to do the thing and whatever.
yeah.
Is it hard to do that? And the answer is no. I believe in the people here more than anything. It's when you get. I spend more time with the people who work here than across teams than most people. Everybody's working on their work. My work is the people. So it's when I lose faith in the people here, that's when you'll stop seeing me. But it hasn't happened in 12 years. It's not going to happen anytime soon. I love the people here.
To be honest, like on server performance, the 6 to 8 issues we're looking at now are definitely the source of the problems.
Do you want to just enumerate what the 6 to 8 issues are? You mentioned it a couple times, and it's
You
just
might as well tell us.
why don't we
Yeah.
just use this opportunity?
Of course. I can. Well, I don't want to deep dive into each of them
Yeah,
because
just give us
Just
the
give me
names.
the top level.
it's a bit
Yeah, yeah.
intense if we go down that route. But there's navigation system dispatching of tile configuration changes on planets, which affects how AI use the nav mesh on planets. So
Okay.
there's a performance call out on that is costing us a chunk of frame in the servers. This is purely based on the servers we know are affected by this problem. There's
A lot of digging.
yeah.
A lot of digging through a lot of data
Yes.
to find the sort of common culprit that are going to make a meaningful impact.
Yeah, no, exactly. This is like cross-linking a lot of things. There's this is a pet peeve of mine that I keep pushing on, and we're gonna definitely resolve that from a software point of view. But there's an entity spawner in some of the areas that are affected that are coming in and out of streaming and respawning their spawn set every time.
This is the NPCs that just go. It just spouts out.
Right.
And
over
one
spawning,
example,
yeah.
I have multiple others related to this. That's one. The area component we talked about. So it's what we call register with external systems is a phase when the components are a component or an entity is coming online, when it's streaming in, it needs to register with external systems. That's a notorious area that is an issue on multiple components. This one is from the area component, is in that place a problem.
So the first two are NPC related.
Correct.
Overspawning.
This one
okay.
is
This one is more engine and let's call it area configuration related.
Okay.
This one bleeds into the zone lock that we talked about earlier. So those are two, area and zone lock. So this is really tied to the amount of content in the game and the complexity of that content in some areas. Because we're also making more and more complex scenes.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, like Space Station and, you know, the content we've put out recently, whether it's
Yeah,
TSG or
yeah.
Rockcracker, or like, there's a lot more
Moving
complex
parts,
layouts
yeah.
in those elements that contribute a lot to this, and so those are part of that. The ship cleanup is another big one that we're looking at the moment, which is the source probably of the other two, which is the amount of registered entities that have
Yeah.
either MFDs and or the flight system active.
entities that specifically have MFDs.
Yes.
So it's an excessive number of MFDs.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we need to get
Why,
rid
why
of
is
the
an
ships.
MFD so?
Well, we don't know specifically. I bet that if I went into that area and I looked, there would be a bunch of MFDs
Like,
that are somehow
dead
visible.
ships.
So that's been these components have a visibility aspect to it, where if you look at it, it's going to replicate for
there.
you, but if you don't look at it, it doesn't.
okay.
Might be a malfunction with that. We're not sure.
Right. So the ship is breaking, but the MFDs are still
Still
visible.
Yeah, it
So-
could be like broken ship MFDs. You know, like we've seen weird things. Like, you know, everybody knows about the graveyard. There's been other graveyards in other areas, right? So there might be a new one we haven't found yet, where there's a somehow
Bunch of
MFDs
ships.
end up there, right?
So you have a couple AI NPC related
Yes.
things, NPCs, and the way they interact with the surface of worlds, planets, and moons. NPC spawners, you know, these things that load out, load in, and then respawn their entire their entire
Fleet of
allotment
NPCs.
of AI when they're already out there. So you got some NPC stuff. You got some location stuff.
So you see, when you guys see me going out there and I'm killing all the NPCs, all the criminals at all these criminal places, and you say, Steph, why are you murdering everybody? I should be doing that. I'm cleaning up the verse. I'm cleaning up the overspawn issues.
The locations are getting more complex, and the area system is not properly culling them.
Yeah, it's an optimization at this point. Like, the functionality is correct. It's just it's slow.
A lot of.
A lot of it. Yeah.
And then there's the ship specific one,
Yeah,
the cleanup stuff, and then there's some raw entity stuff that we also suspect
Yes.
is related to the ships, because the ships have the most entities.
And one final one that is fire. So there's been some
Oh, yeah, fire is a big thing.
some ships catch fire, and depending on
stay
the
on
size
fire.
of the voxel grid, we've seen the area physics properties of how the temperature system interacts with fire is actually needs a big optimization, and it's costing us frame time.
Yeah.
Where-
No, but I think in any game you play, when they implement fire, especially at the level like Star Citizen has, it always takes frames. Fire and lights always take frames. I've always noticed that in every single game. If you turn on your fire settings or whatever effect settings, you get so many frames, and that's like single player games and all these other smaller MMOs. So I'd like to believe that the server on a live service game like Star Citizen with fire is getting hit heavy.
That's a combination thing, because internally we can't reproduce it, but we see the cost on some of the game servers that are running slow.
So these are the top 8
Yes.
ish kind of culprits to just
Optimization
raw
here, yeah.
server performance. We can optimize these 8 things. We should see
Big gains.
big gains. I wasn't going to say big, but I'll let you say it. You know, see
gain.
big gains in server performance.
Yeah. Now
And-
the thing with everything with optimization, right? It's a fog of war, right? When you
You fix that. That's what was slowing it down.
Something,
Then you find the
yeah.
next thing ends up.
Kill you get rid of the elephant, and behind it
Is
is another one.
rhino.
It's the 7-Up can that was slowing us down. You know, the Pepsi can would have been slowing us down the whole time, but the 7-Up was
is the
doing
first.
it first. So
Yeah.
the Pepsi never got a chance to slow us
Exactly.
down.
And
you
it's-
optimize 7-Up, and now Pepsi's like, my time is here.
time
I
is
can
here.
screw you over.
I can now be
I
the
am
one
the
on top.
captain now.
Choice of a new generation.
Yeah.
Pepsi is better than Coke. If I ever look right, if there's any company that ever wants to sponsor me that's like a drinks company, I don't drink alcohol. I only drink soft drinks. Pepsi.
That's how old I am. Did you guys have that campaign here? A bunch of children. There's only one nodding head over there.
You know, the same properties apply to crashes, right? Typically when we do like stability checks on game servers, which by the way, other than the two big issues that we've had, the baseline stability for 4.8 outside of these two events of the missing
It's
entity classes and the Idris problem, overall stability has been in a really good range overall. And so we've been happy about this. Other than now, the stats are terrible because of this, so we'll have to take a look. But the same properties apply to crashes. So when we look at top crashes, you're like, oh, we just have to fix this one. It's super high frequency. Then we fix it, and then, oh my God, there's 3 more, right? And so it's a fog of war. Optimization and crash stability are like fog of war activity where, yeah, you've got 7 now, you know what those are. We fix them.
Now there's
It might
2
be
more.
the end of it. It might not be.
You can get clusters as well, and that's the same on the performance side. We might be looking very, very closely at the servers performing poorly, and we might be fixing things that help those, but that doesn't help at all to the other servers because they might be running into completely different issues. Like there might be something that's happening specifically on those servers that's unique to them that brings them to that low rate, whereas the rest of them don't benefit as much from that. So you always have to sort of look closely at the details and react to those, but proactively try to look at the big picture and sort of take you sort of where are we going overall. Once we fix that cluster there, how do we get all of it to sort of benefit from a smooth ride with zero desync?
Just a ray of sunshine, yeah.
Yes, that's it. I'm just
We want
bringing the
butter. I wanted to touch on in my notes I've got, because there was other issues in 4.8 that, come from other optimizations that we've done and or other improvements that also contributed to some perception on the patch.
Okay.
So there's one thing that we're battling on the game side is that, we mentioned how we're transforming the game from one model to the MMO model, right? And that means scaling systems. When we say that, we really mean transforming those systems to be service powered, right? So instead of being all in the game server and it's all good, right?
It should be when someone
We
needs it.
transfer these things to be service powered, right?
So the server no longer has to run transit. The server no longer has to run.
In part, right? It could be transit, it could be other things, right? Like for example, missions had a part of the mission system needed to be pulled out of there to be able to have server meshed missions, for example, right? So there's a lot of work behind that to basically dissect some services and move them to some game systems and move them to services. Interacting from the game client with services that are on cloud infrastructure is kind of a different discipline than being a gameplay programmer doing a gameplay feature, right? Let's say I'm working on the main character, the actor in the actor team, like Jens, for example, and I'm doing a feature around that. But my world is kind of self-contained to the actor. If I'm also doing the replication side of this, which typically our gameplay programmers do both, but I know about the replication side of things, but that's the bubble. It doesn't exist, that bubble, right? When you talk about cloud infrastructure, cloud services, that you need to invoke, service APIs to do something, whether it's inventory service, right? Whether it's reputation systems, whether it's friend service, social systems, whatever. That's a different type of programming that tends to always be based in what, for the layman's is asynchronous programming. So not all C++ gameplay programmers are well versed in the asynchronous aspects. More and more today, but it's still always a little bit of a jump. And so we've realized that there's a little bit of fragility in how some of our game systems interact with cloud services. So one of the particularities with this is that you need to design for things that can fail. That sounds horrible, but that's the way it is, right? When you visit a website and it's loading assets and one asset doesn't load, your browser is going to retry and you're not even going to see the difference, right?
Yeah.
Now, the game in some areas, and I'm going to focus on the one I wanted to talk about today, which is inventory, is very fragile in its interactions with the backend systems. And so we had an issue in 4.8 that was, from a backend perspective, extremely minor. We're talking about 100 requests out of millions of requests every 2 minutes would have a problem, right?
Right. There's a lot of problems.
But the net effect, because that was affecting the inventory, is that people's inventory would get stuck.
Yeah.
And so the
you see
effect
nothing.
on the game was completely magnified from what the backend team.
Because you can't do anything with your inventory, really.
Well, yeah. So
Yeah,
the
you're
inventory
kinda
has this
stuck.
issue. It's not an issue. It's a property where all of the moves that you do in your inventory need to be ordered. They need to be performed in order, and that requirement is extreme because you can't go, put this element on the head, and then put this other element on the head, and take this one
Yeah.
back and stow it, and then move the core armor. And then if the backend systems were completely asynchronous and do this in parallel, you would end up with like mixed results. And so
Or we could not have prediction, which would be the other option. But then obviously we run into the problem that
Performance.
I put the helmet on my head and I'm waiting.
yeah.
You're waiting
Yeah,
for the
waiting.
server to catch up.
And
No,
Sarah
wait.
says,
Waiting, waiting,
give
waiting
me
for
5
server.
minutes.
While I'm doing that, I can't do anything else.
And so the
Anytime, waiting for my helmet to show up.
and so this minor, like I said, from a backend perspective, 100,
100 times out of 2 million is what you said.
100 out of 2 million
Every 2 minutes.
every 2 minutes, right? Which was a heartbeat problem. Anyway, it's been fixed, but the net effect was that you're making moves on your inventory, and then one of the moves stays there to the possible maximum of the timeout, which is 8 minutes in this case.
Damn.
Which that's the problem.
So that's what's happening to all my gear. But can they explain why my gear disappeared? I had a whole really, really cool set. I put it on and it just showed up for like 2 seconds and it disappeared. It's not on the floor. It's not in my inventory. My things are just disappearing now. Is that a different issue?
But
It's a long time.
and so now,
In the game.
if you looked at, backers at this point that have been with us for a long time all run with some display info, and so they see the pending moves debug on the UI, and so they can see, there's a move that's stuck, right? And so that's how these things were stuck. If you were unlucky and you did a move in one of those 2 minute window, I say every 2 minutes, but it was really a 3 second small window. If you did a move in those 3 seconds, then your inventory was stuck for 8 minutes, which is crazy,
An eternity. And
And so that I use that
So I keep finding out those 3 seconds back to back to back?
example first to explain it, because a lot of people ask the question, what's happening when this happens? That's what happened. Now we fixed that issue, obviously, so that no longer is the back end issue is no longer occurring, but we still have that weakness on the client.
Right.
So that's one thing we need to
Okay,
solve
right,
now
okay.
is we've realized, Jens and I have had multiple conversations about this, but we've realized that there's a lot of areas in the game, whether it's freight elevators, whether it's inventory management, handling, and I'm not talking about the UI here. I'm talking about what's behind it when you do your moves, like
the UI is where you get to see it.
See
Yeah.
it, yeah.
It's actually something underneath. Okay.
Yeah.
Obviously, yeah.
These systems, we've identified a series of weaknesses in how either legacy systems were built because they were built before these services existed, and then asynchronous calls were tacked on in the middle to get something working. And so we started to develop a charter that we've started to analyze every game system with this charter, right? It's basically a very simple red, amber, green kind of tracking, right? Where we can look at one system, let's say we look at inventory management, we can ask all these questions, right? And with this, we will identify all the pitfalls that this system needs to resolve. So without having a bug report, I can just look at the code and go, you know what?
This is wrong, this
This
is
breaks this principle. I need to fix this principle, right? So one example of principle is player items are sacred, right? So if I have actions to do, for example, I need to turn in stuff for a mission, I will not delete the items, then progress the mission. I will
Okay.
progress the mission, and on success and confirmation, I will then delete. And then if the delete
items.
fails, I need
They just said, in turn, they just said they're fixing Wicklow. They're saying they're fixing Wicklow. Wicklow is not going to take your items, delete the items, then complete the mission and say, oh, well, you gave me nothing. They're saying they're fixing Wicklow. This is what they're just saying. They're fixing
to
Wicklow.
have compensating actions to move forward, right? So that's an example of like the analysis that we're doing.
It's Wicklow. Wicklow's gonna get a
Asynchronous
fix.
programming we talked about needs to be explicit for all paths. So we're evaluating all of that. There's multiple other areas in the charter, but that's one of the things we're putting in place to augment the interactions between game client server and services. When things go wrong, and they do, right? That's the nature of internet packets not being delivered, services not being available, cloud services being there or not, that there's no like irreparable breakage, and that the experience can still continue and be resilient.
Flip says, Jared looks exhausted. I'm not the one that was up till 4 o'clock in the morning fixing this thing. You know, it's somebody, what was it earlier? Earlier was like, it's like, this is what happens. Where is it? One of our moderators nuked it, but Wrangle McDangle nuked comment says, this is what the community looks like when they start to realize the company they give their money to doesn't really care about them. Sad. This is the CTO who was up until 4 o'clock this morning. You know,
Yes,
bug
it's still
fixing.
here.
You know, not just the directors and the programmers, and you had plenty of people with them and whatnot, but they're up to all hours of the night trying to get this stuff going and whatnot. And then they come here and they do this and whatnot. This is not people who don't care. But anyway, that was a comment about how tired I look. This is just how I look. So the system was built for
to delete items,
kind of perfection. It expects everything to work the way that it wants to, and because the system was built without the expectation of some level of failure, it ends up, when it gets some level of failure, it fails completely.
Yeah.
So you actually get, so in a weird way, if you build something with the expectation of no failure, you end up with a lot of failure.
Yeah.
And if you build something with the expectation of a little bit of failure, you end up with less failure than you otherwise would have, because it's more
prepare for the worst but expect the best. That's what it is.
nimble, and it can adjust, and it's what it's self-healing, self-healing stuff.
Yeah.
There's this idea of, we don't plan for failure or whatever, and every time I hear something like that, we don't plan for failure or whatever, I'm just remembered of NASA. NASA in the 60s, like, these are people who plan for every kind of failure, and that's part of why they succeeded. Yes. What you're talking about just kind of reminded me of this interesting paradigm shift, or philosophical shift of creating for some level of failure so that we can be nimble and self-correcting, and then we end up having fewer things like what we're experiencing, where the whole thing just craps out for 8 minutes and stuff. It's an interesting philosophical switch.
I think Benoit is absolutely right as well with the challenges from a gameplay side. Certainly, if you come from a background of running things only on your local machine, it's so responsive, right? Whatever you do just comes back immediately, and suddenly you haven't. Yeah, exactly. And suddenly you have to work on these premises where your timeout might be 8 minutes later. It's a from a scale point of view.
Example.
That's a very extreme example, and you go, how do you, and as well as much as you all, from my point of view as from the gameplay side, is obviously, I still want to always be super responsive to the player. So even if it's self-healing under the hood, you should still see everything you do have an immediate reaction in game. So that's why we always predict, and that's why sometimes things go wrong, but we accept that things will go wrong and we roll back. But we try to sort of be right more than we're wrong. So like you said, only be wrong a tiny bit of the time, not all the time.
So, I wanted to touch on the charter, without going into details, but just because people are asking, what are you doing about it, right? And I think that this kind of audit, where we can kind of leverage our programmers, not just to build the features, but because, gameplay programmers are going to be in their world when they're doing something. And so they're making the feature, they're trying to make it feel good, and then they're like, it works. That's the happy path, right? Now, let me unplug the internet, right? Let me,
And see what
you know,
happens.
unplug the internet for 2 seconds and plug it back in, right? Or it's basically, you know, on the online side, we call it chaos engineering, which is more like, let's kill processes and see what happens so that we can recover. On the game side, I think that we kind of need to bring this perspective to the table to every developer so that they can evaluate their own work against basically a rag sheet of like, explain the longest async chain in this component, and does it have every path handled, and can it be retried, right? Well, just with that, I solved half the bugs that we can see in some of the systems that interact with cloud services specifically are the areas that are there. Now there's way more principles and stuff to look at in the area, but that's what we've been doing, is to basically like bring this so that it's not just the leaders that bring it, the sort of the hammer down of like, you need to do this way and this is what we do. It's more like bring it as a culture throughout the gameplay teams and the engineering teams.